I want to thank all the witnesses for your testimony, and I'd like to now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. And Mr. Corkwell, you have the honor of getting the first question, if you don't mind. This is about fueling innovation while ensuring safety and security. Your testimony highlights how delays and restrictive assumptions under TUSCa can delay new chemistry from reaching the market. So let me ask you, if you don't mind, how do your Deer Park and Bayport operations, happen to be in my district, support innovation in critical sectors like transportation and energy? As quickly as possible, if you don't mind, because I have several questions.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The products we make in your district at those plants at Deer Park and Bayport are used to manufacture lubricants, greases, transmission fluids, gear oils. And I'm very proud at Lubrizol to say there's virtually not an ambulance or a fire truck in America that probably does not have Lubrizol's chemistry in its axle, its transmission, or somewhere it's in its engine. And helping make those products last longer and be more efficient is part of what Lubrizol is all about. And much of that chemistry for the U.S. and the world comes from that particular plant.
Thank you very much. What are the consequences for U.S. competitiveness if regulatory delays continue the way they've been going?
As you've heard from the testimony today, chemistry is often the start of a very long value chain where our chemical ingredients as a specialty chemical maker are turned into products that are used to build airplanes and all the other devices we have. If we cannot continue to invest and have reliable timelines that allow us to make the investments needed, we cannot bring new chemistries to market. And the new chemistries we want to bring to the market are providing greater performance and in many cases have a better environmental profile than the ones we're trying to replace. We need to be able to bring those to market in a timely manner, a predictable manner, so that we can feed that supply chain.
Exactly. And finally, what specific steps should Congress take to make sure that EPA uses the best available science and realistic scenarios so that we can protect the health and environment without stifling innovation?
Yes, absolutely. I think most importantly is a predictable timeline. In order to make investment decisions and allow new innovations to come to market, we must know what the predictable timeline is. We need to use good science and all the science available. In most cases, the people doing the research on these products have the best available data. We need to take that into consideration. And we need to consider the risk, not just the hazard, but the risk in the actual use and application that's being described.
Thank you. And Dr. Gross, given that the timeline to usher a chemical from R&D phase to an industrial scale often takes 5 to 10 plus years, as you mentioned with your own daughter, from research bench to commercialization. So how can regulatory policy be designed to provide long-term certainty for chemical manufacturing companies and downstream users to account for changing political and economic landscapes?
Thank you for the question. One of the things that we, again, Boeing is a user, a downstream user. We're not responsible for the applications like to the EPA for extended use. That being said, clarity for the downstream users are where those applications are would be incredibly important. Today, you know, we rely on the suppliers to tell us where the bottlenecks are, why things are held up. We could support them better if we actually understood, say, data needs or additional information that could help in the EPA review process. So that clarity to the downstream users would be incredibly important, and that's something that, you know, Congress could help with.
Right. Thank you. And Ms. Bertrand, regulatory timelines increasingly influence the transition away from legacy cleaning technologies, raising questions about their alignment with the time required for research and development, testing, and qualification of mission-critical alternatives. In your view, are current regulatory timelines aligned with the realistic pace of R&D, testing, and qualification required for mission-critical precision cleaning alternatives?
So in my experience, the regulatory timeframes are not often aligned with the realistic pace that is required for R&D, testing, and qualification. It can take 8 to 10 years to qualify for space flight. But that doesn't account for the volume of chemistries that are being prohibited and restricted right now. That also doesn't account for the immediate effects that regulations can have when there's uncertainty in the market. So for example, while I was at NASA, they had already experienced the loss of mission-critical chemistries with no known alternatives needed to support Artemis. That was due to market drivers and regulatory environment. The supplier made a business decision to stop manufacturing those products. So without an alternative, NASA needed to find some mitigating measures and is currently investigating. When I left, they were still investigating alternatives. For a program like NASA's, getting the chemistry is necessary, it's critical. Failure to clean systems can lead to catastrophic consequences. So chemistries like that have a very, very important role for NASA and other agencies.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, and that concludes my time.